The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. A shrill cry slicing through the silence of Eli's cramped apartment. He jolted awake, heart pounding, the kind of dread you feel when the world's about to tilt. It wasn't his phone, it was the burner, buried in a drawer, meant for emergencies that never came. Eli, 25, rubbed sleep from his eyes, his calloused hands trembling as he grabbed the cheap plastic phone. The caller ID was blank, but he knew who it would be. Only one person had this number, Riley, the non-binary activist he'd met once, briefly, at a protest 6 months ago. They'd exchanged numbers in case things went south. Things always went south in their line of work. Fighting for queer rights in a city where hate crimes spiked every election cycle wasn't exactly a safe gig. Hello. His voice cracked, rough from sleep. Eli, it's Riley, came a breathless whisper, sharp with panic. I'm in trouble. Big trouble. Where are you? He was already pulling on his boots, heart hammering. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as Riley's voice shook. Downtown, near 4th and Pine. 2 saw something. They're after me. Their words tumbled out, clipped and urgent. I didn't know who else to call. Stay put. I'm coming. Eli didn't hesitate. He didn't know Riley well, hell. He barely knew them at all, but you don't leave someone hanging when they sound like that. Not in this city. Not when you're both outcasts in a world that wants you silent. He grabbed his leather jacket, the one with the tear from a bar fight last year, and bolted out the door. The stairwell of his rundown building smelled like stale cigarettes and regret, but he barely noticed. His mind was on Riley, on the tremor in their voice, on the unspoken rule that you show up for your people. No questions asked. Outside, the city was alive with its usual late-night pulse, neon signs flickering, distant sirens wailing. Eli's boots hit the pavement hard as he sprinted toward downtown, the cold November air biting his face. He didn't have a car. Hadn't had one since the repo man came knocking last spring. Public transit was a joke at this hour, so he ran, his breath clouding in the chill. Riley's call had been vague, but the fear was clear. They'd seen something bad enough to make them run, to make them call a near stranger in the dead of night. Eli's mind raced with possibilities. A deal gone wrong. A hate group stalking them. Riley was outspoken, fearless, the kind of person who'd stare down a bigot with a megaphone and a grin. That made them a target. He reached 4th and Pine in under 15 minutes, his lungs burning. The street was a ghost town, lined with shuttered storefronts and flickering streetlights. He scanned the shadows, heart sinking. No Riley. Just the faint hum of the city and the distant bark of a dog. Riley. He hissed, keeping his voice low. Nothing. His stomach twisted. Had they been caught? Had he been too slow? Then, movement, a flash of blue hair behind a dumpster in the alley. Riley stepped out, their hoodies soaked from the drizzle, eyes wide and darting. They were 22, slight but wiry, with a fierceness that belied their frame. Their hands shook as they clutched their phone like a lifeline. Eli, they whispered, rushing toward him. Thank God. What happened? He asked, grabbing their arm gently, scanning the alley for threats. The shadows felt alive, watching. I was at a meeting, Riley said, their voice low but urgent. Underground. You know. For the community. We were planning a rally, but I saw something I wasn't supposed to. They know I saw. Who's they? Eli's eyes narrowed. He pulled Riley closer to the wall, out of the streetlight's glare. I don't know exactly. Men in suits. Not the usual thugs. They were talking about, I think it was a hit list. Names. Addresses, queer activists. Organizers. My name was on it. Riley's voice broke. And for the first time, Eli saw fear in their eyes, raw and unguarded. His blood ran cold. A hit list. In this city, it wasn't a surprise hate groups had been bolder lately, emboldened by political rhetoric and dark money. But hearing it, knowing Riley's name was on it, made it real. Too real. We need to move, Eli said, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. My place is too far. You got somewhere safe? Riley shook their head. My apartment's compromised. They know where I live. Eli swore under his breath. Okay. There's a safe house. A few blocks from here. Community run. Off the grid. We can hole up there until we figure this out. Riley nodded, but their eyes kept flicking to the street, like they expected someone to step out of the shadows. Eli couldn't blame them. He felt it too, the weight of unseen eyes, the sense that they were already being hunted. They moved quickly, sticking to the alleys, avoiding main streets. Eli led the way, his hand brushing Riley's arm to keep them close. It wasn't just about safety. It was instinct, a need to know they were still there, still breathing. The city felt like a maze, every corner a potential trap. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone tucked behind a laundromat, its windows boarded up to look abandoned. Eli knocked in the pattern 3 quick, too slow. The door cracked open, revealing a woman in her 40s, her face stern but kind. You're late, she said, eyeing Riley. Trouble found us, Eli replied, ushering Riley inside. The door shut behind them, the lock clicking with finality. Inside, the safe house was sparse but warm, with mismatched furniture and a faint smell of coffee. A few other activists were there, faces Eli recognized from protests and meetings. They nodded at him, their eyes lingering on Riley with curiosity and concern. Sit, Eli said, guiding Riley to a couch. They sank into it, still clutching their phone. Tell me everything. From the start. Riley took a shaky breath, their blue hair falling into their eyes. I was at the meeting. Like I said, it was at this old warehouse, one of our usual spots. We were talking about the rally next week, big one, to push back against the new anti-trans laws. I stepped out for air, and that's when I saw them. 3 guys, expensive suits, standing by a black SUV. They didn't see me at first, but I heard them. They had a list: names, addresses, routines. They mentioned me. Eli. They said I was a problem. Eli's jaw tightened. Did they see you? I don't think so. I ran, hid in the alley, called you. But they know I was there. They'll figure it out. Eli leaned forward, his mind racing. A hit list meant organization, money, power. This wasn't some random bigot with a bat. This was something bigger, something planned. And Riley brave. Defiant Riley was in the crosshairs. We'll figure this out, he said, his voice firm. You're not alone in this. Riley looked at him, their eyes softening for the first time. Why'd you come, Eli? You barely know me. He hesitated, then shrugged. Because you called. Because I know what it's like to feel like the world's against you. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the weight of the night settling between them. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to the danger lurking in its veins. Inside, 2 strangers sat closer than they ever expected, bound by a shared fight and something else. Something unspoken, stirring in the quiet. The safe house was a fragile sanctuary, its walls thin against the chaos outside. Riley sat hunched on the couch, their hands still trembling as they recounted the night. Eli listened, his eyes scanning their face for clues not just to the danger, but to who Riley was beneath the fear. They mentioned a name, Riley said, their voice steadier now but still laced with urgency. Carson sounded like he was in charge. They said he'd handle the problem if it came to it. Carson, Eli repeated, the name unfamiliar but heavy. He leaned back, running a hand through his dark hair. You ever hear it before? At a protest? A meeting? Riley shook their head. No. But the way they said it, it wasn't just some thug. This guy's got pull. Money. Maybe. Power. Eli glanced at the others in the room. The woman who'd let them in, Mara, was a veteran activist, her face lined with years of fighting battles most people never saw. She was at a table now, murmuring with two Othersa trans women named Sasha and a quiet guy, Jamal, who always carried a laptop. They were already digging, trying to piece together what Riley had stumbled into. We need to know who Carson is, Eli said, turning back to Riley. If he's got a list, we need to know who else is on it. Riley nodded, but their eyes were distant, replaying the moment in the alley. I should have stayed quiet, they muttered. I should have just walked away. Hey. Eli's voice was soft but firm. He reached out, hesitating before resting a hand on their shoulder. You did the right thing. You called. You're here. Riley met his gaze, and for a second, the room felt smaller. The air charged. Eli pulled his hand back, suddenly aware of how close they were. He cleared his throat. We'll get through this. Together. Mara approached, her expression grim. We've got a problem. Jamal's got a contact in the police department off the record. Word is, there's been chatter about a cleanup operation, targeting activists, especially queer ones. No hard evidence, but it lines up with what Riley heard. Eli's stomach churned. A cleanup operation. What? Like they're just gonna start picking us off? Sounds like it, Mara said. And if Riley's name is out there, we need to move fast. This place is safe for now, but it won't be for long if they're organized. Riley stood, pacing. I can't just hide. If they're coming for me, they're coming for others. We need to warn people. Warn who? Sasha chimed in, her voice sharp. We don't even know who's on the list. If we start spreading this, it could cause panic. Or worse, tip them off that we know. She's right, Eli said, though he hated it. We need more info. Riley, you said they were by a warehouse. You remember anything else? A license plate, a logo on the SUV. Riley closed their eyes, thinking. It was dark, but I think the SUV had a sticker. Small, on the back window. Looked like a crest or something. Maybe a company logo. That's a start, Jamal said, opening his laptop. I'll see what I can pull up. If it's a company, they might be sloppy enough to leave a trail. Eli watched Riley, who was still pacing, their energy restless. He stood, stepping into their path. You need to sit. You're gonna burn out. I can't, Riley snapped, then softened. Sorry. I feel like I brought this on everyone. You didn't, Eli said. You're not the one making lists. You're not the one hunting people. Riley stopped, looking at him. Their blue hair caught the dim light, and Eli noticed the freckles across their nose, barely visible in the shadows. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease the weight on their shoulders, but words felt clumsy. Instead, he gestured to the couch. Come on. Let's figure out our next move. They sat, closer this time, their knees almost touching. Mara and the others were deep in discussion, but Eli's focus was on Riley. There was something about them, their defiance, their vulnerability that pulled at him. He'd spent years keeping people at arm's length, ever since his family kicked him out for being gay. But Riley was different. They made him want to step closer, not pull away. Jamal looked up from his laptop. Got something. That crest you mentioned. Sounds like it could be tied to a private security firm. Vanguard Solutions. They've got contracts with some shady political groups. Been linked to consulting for campaigns that push anti-queer rhetoric. Vanguard. Eli muttered. That's not small time. No, Mara said. And if they're involved, this goes deeper than we thought. Riley, you're sure about that crest? Pretty sure, Riley said. It had a red circle, maybe a bird in the middle. Jamal typed furiously. That's their logo. Red circle, hawk in the center. They're based here, downtown. Big money, big connections. Eli's mind raced. A private security firm with a hit list. This was bigger than a random hate group. This was calculated, professional. And Riley had walked right into their crosshairs. We need to get that list, Eli said. If we can prove it exists, we can expose them. Blow this thing wide open. Expose them how? Sasha asked. We're not exactly the New York Times. And if they're watching Riley, they're watching us now too. Then we move fast, Eli said. Riley, you said the warehouse was one of our spots. You think they'll go back there? Maybe, Riley said. It's a hub for a lot of our planning. If they're targeting activists, they might hit it again. Eli nodded. Then that's where we start. We go back. Look for evidence, anything that ties this to Vanguard. Are you insane? Riley asked, their eyes wide. They could be waiting there. Maybe, Eli admitted. But if we don't act, they'll come for you. For all of us. Riley stared at him, and he saw the conflict in their eyes, fear warring with resolve. Finally, they nodded. Okay. But we're not going in blind. Never, Eli said, a small smile breaking through. We'll plan it out. Together. The room buzzed with quiet determination as the group started strategizing. Eli and Riley sat side by side, their shoulders brushing now and then, a silent promise forming between them. The danger was real, but so was the connection fragile. New, but undeniable. In the shadows of the safe house, something was taking root. Something neither of them expected, but both felt growing. The plan came together in whispers, the safe house alive with the hum of urgency. Eli and Riley sat at the center of it, mapping out their return to the warehouse. Mara sketched a rough layout of the building on a napkin, marking entrances and blind spots, while Jamal scoured the dark web for any chatter about Vanguard Solutions. It's risky, Mara said, tapping the napkin. The warehouse is exposed. One way in, one way out, unless you count the fire escape, which is rusted to hell. We don't have a choice, Eli said. If that list exists, it's our best shot at stopping this. Riley's jaw was tight, their eyes fixed on the napkin. I can get us in. I know the code for the back door. But if they're watching, we'll be careful, Eli said, his voice steady. He caught Riley's gaze, holding it. We go in. We get proof. We get out. No heroics. Riley gave a small nod, but their hands fidgeted in their lap. Eli wanted to reach out, to steady them, but he kept his focus on the plan. Feelings could wait. Survival couldn't. By 4 a.m. They had a rough strategy. Eli and Riley would scout the warehouse at dawn, when the streets were quiet but not deserted. Mara would stay back, coordinating with Jamal, who'd keep digging for digital evidence. Sasha would be their lookout, stationed across the street with a burner phone. You sure about this? Sasha asked Riley, her voice softer now. You don't have to go back there. I do, Riley said. If I don't, they win. I'm not letting them scare me into hiding. Eli felt a surge of admiration. Riley was scared. He could see it in the way their shoulders tensed, but they weren't backing down. He knew that kind of courage, the kind that burned brighter than fear. He'd felt it himself, years ago, when he'd walked away from his family's hate and never looked back. They left the safe house just before dawn, the city draped in a gray haze. Eli and Riley moved in silence, their steps quick and light. Sasha trailed behind, blending into the early morning joggers and delivery workers. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking relic of the city's industrial past, its windows dark and boarded. Eli's heart pounded as they approached the back door. Riley punched in the code 7-4-9-1 and the lock clicked open. The door creaked, loud in the stillness, and Eli winced, scanning the alley. No movement, no shadows. Yet, inside, the warehouse was a maze of crates and old machinery, the air thick with dust. Faint light filtered through cracks in the walls, casting long, jagged shadows. Riley led the way, their steps sure despite the tension in their frame. "This is where I saw them," Riley whispered, pointing to a corner near a stack of pallets. "They were standing there, by that window." Eli nodded, pulling out his phone to snap photos. The space looked ordinary. No papers, no laptops, no convenient evidence lying around. But something felt off. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. "Eli," Riley hissed, grabbing his arm. Their eyes were wide, fixed on the floor. There, half hidden by a crate, was a cigarette butt, still faintly smoldering. "Someone's here," Eli whispered, his pulse spiking. He pulled Riley behind a stack of boxes, his hand lingering on their arm. "Stay low." They crouched, listening. Footsteps slow, deliberate, echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Eli peeked out, catching a glimpse of a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by shadow. He was holding something, a phone, maybe, or a radio. Riley's breath hitched, and Eli squeezed their hand, a silent reassurance. They needed to move, but the man was too close, pacing like a predator. Eli's mind raced. If they were caught, there'd be no talking their way out. Not with Vanguard involved. The man's radio crackled, a voice cutting through the silence. "Carson wants an update. You find the kid yet?" Eli's blood froze. Carson. The name again, spoken like it carried weight. Riley's grip tightened, their nails digging into his palm. "Not yet," the man replied, his voice low. "But they were here. I can feel it." Eli gestured toward the fire escape, barely visible through a side door. It was their only shot. He leaned close to Riley, his lips brushing their ear as he whispered, "On 3, we run. Don't look back." Riley nodded, their eyes locked on his. For a moment, the danger faded, and it was just them, two people, scared but together, their breaths sinking in the dark. 1, Eli whispered. 2, 3. They bolted, feet pounding against the concrete. The man shouted, his radio crackling as he gave chase. Eli shoved the fire escape door open, the rusted metal screeching. The stairs swayed under their weight, but they didn't stop, scrambling up to the roof. The city stretched out below, a sprawl of lights and shadows. Eli grabbed Riley's hand, pulling them toward the edge, where a narrow ledge led to the next building. "We can make it," he said, his voice urgent. Riley hesitated, their eyes flicking to the drop below. "Eli, trust me," he said, squeezing their hand. "I've got you." They ran, leaping the gap, landing hard on the neighboring roof. The man's shouts faded behind them, but Eli didn't stop, pulling Riley toward a maintenance hatch. They slipped inside, collapsing in a dark stairwell, their breaths ragged. "You okay?" Eli asked, his voice hoarse. Riley nodded, their chest heaving. "Yeah." "You?" "Yeah." He managed a shaky smile. "That was close." They sat there, catching their breath, their hands still entwined. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by something warmer, something that made Eli's chest ache. He looked at Riley, their blue hair damp with sweat, their eyes bright with life. "We didn't get the list," Riley said, their voice small. "No," Eli said. "But we're alive. And we know more now. That's enough for tonight." Riley leaned against him, just slightly, and Eli didn't pull away. The stairwell was cold, the danger still looming. But in that moment, they were safe. And that was enough. The stairwell was a temporary refuge, its dim light barely cutting through the gloom. Eli and Riley sat shoulder to shoulder, their breathing slowing as the adrenaline ebbed. The city's hum filtered through the walls, a reminder that the world hadn't stopped, even if their lives felt like they had. "We can't go back to the safe house," Riley said, their voice low. "Not yet. If they're watching the warehouse, they might know about it." Eli nodded, his mind still replaying the chase. The man's voice, the radio crackling with Carson's name, was all too real. "We need somewhere else to lay low. Somewhere off their radar." "My friend Casey," Riley said after a moment. "They've got a place on the edge of town. Old house. No connection to the community. It's safe." Eli raised an eyebrow. "You trust them?" "With my life," Riley said, their tone leaving no room for doubt. They moved cautiously, slipping out of the stairwell and into the early morning streets. The city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling, joggers weaving through the sidewalks. Eli kept his head down, his hand brushing Riley's as they walked, a silent anchor in the chaos. Casey's house was a small, weathered Victorian on a quiet street, its paint peeling but its windows warm with light. Casey, a wiry 24-year-old with a buzz cut and a septum piercing, opened the door before they could knock. "Riley, what the hell?" they said, pulling them into a hug. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Close enough," Riley muttered, stepping inside. Eli followed, scanning the room. It was cluttered but cozy, with books stacked on every surface and a faint smell of lavender. Casey eyed Eli, then Riley. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" Riley recounted the night, the warehouse, the men, the list. Casey's face darkened with every word. "Vanguard Solutions," they said, shaking their head. "I've heard of them. They're bad news. Hired muscle for politicians who want their dirty work done quietly." "You know anything about a guy named Carson?" Eli asked. Casey frowned. "Not offhand. But I can ask around. I've got contacts who might know something." "Don't," Riley said quickly. "The less people know, the better. We don't want anyone else on their radar." Casey nodded, but their eyes were sharp with worry. "You two can crash here. Spare rooms upstairs. But you need to figure out your next move fast." Eli and Riley settled into the spare room, a small space with a sagging mattress and a single window overlooking the backyard. The quiet felt unnatural after the warehouse, like the calm before a storm. Riley sat on the bed, their knees pulled to their chest, staring at the floor. "You okay?" Eli asked, sitting beside them. He kept his voice soft, not wanting to push. Riley shook their head. "I keep thinking, what if I hadn't called you? What if I'd tried to handle this alone?" "You didn't," Eli said. "And you're not alone now." Riley looked at him, their eyes searching his face. "Why are you doing this?" "Eli, you could have walked away." Most people would. He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because I've been where you are, scared. Running. Feeling like the world's closing in. Maybe because I see you. Riley. Really see you. The air between them shifted, heavy with unspoken things. Riley's hand brushed his, tentative at first, then deliberate. Eli's heart stuttered, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand, lacing their fingers together. It felt right, like a piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was missing. We're gonna get through this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I promise. Riley's lips curved into a small, fragile smile. You're kind of intense. You know that. Eli chuckled, the sound easing the tension. Yeah, well, you're not exactly low-key yourself. They sat like that for a while, hands clasped, the world outside fading. It wasn't love not yet, but it was something. A spark, a possibility, born in the crucible of danger. Casey knocked on the door, breaking the moment. Got some food if you're hungry. Also, I pulled some strings. My contact says Vanguard's got an office downtown. High security, but there's a chance they keep records there. If that list exists, it's probably locked up tight. Eli's jaw tightened. Then we need to get in. Are you nuts? Casey said. That's not a warehouse. That's a fortress. Maybe, Eli said. But if we don't get that list, more people are going to get hurt. We can't just wait. Riley squeezed his hand, their resolve hardening. He's right. We need to end this. Casey sighed. Fine. But you're not going in without a plan. And you're not going in tonight. You both look like you're about to collapse. Eli wanted to argue, but he felt the exhaustion creeping in, heavy in his bones. Riley looked just as worn, their eyes shadowed with fatigue. Okay, he said. We rest. Then we plan. Casey left them to settle in, and Eli and Riley lay on the bed, fully clothed, too wired to sleep, but too tired to move. The mattress creaked under their weight, and Eli felt Riley's warmth beside him, grounding him. Eli. Riley's voice was soft, almost lost in the dark. Yeah. Thank you. For showing up. He turned his head, meeting their gaze. Always. They fell silent, the weight of the night settling over them. Outside, the city churned, but in that small room, they found a moment of peace, a fleeting refuge before the storm. Morning light filtered through the cracked blinds, casting stripes across the room. Eli woke first, his neck stiff from the lumpy mattress. Riley was still asleep, their blue hair splayed across the pillow, one hand curled near their face. For a moment, he just watched them, struck by how peaceful they looked, like the world hadn't tried to break them last night. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake them, and found Casey in the kitchen, brewing coffee. You're up early, they said, handing him a mug. Couldn't sleep much, Eli admitted, taking a sip. The coffee was strong, bitter, exactly what he needed. You got anything on that Vanguard office? Casey nodded, sliding a laptop across the table. Pulled some blueprints from a public database. Old ones. But there's something. The office is on the 12th floor of a corporate building downtown. Security's tight cameras. Keycard access. Guards at night. Eli studied the blueprints, his mind already mapping out entry points. What about servers? If they've got digital records, that's our best bet. Probably in a locked server room, Casey said. Jamal's still digging. But if Vanguard's as slick as they seem, those files won't be easy to crack. Riley appeared in the doorway, rubbing their eyes. You two plotting without me. Just getting a head start, Eli said, offering a small smile. He pushed the laptop toward them. Casey's got blueprints. We're thinking the Vanguard office is our next move. Riley's face hardened as they studied the screen. This is crazy. You know that, right? Yeah, Eli said. But so is sitting around waiting for them to find us. They spent the morning refining the plan. The Vanguard office was a fortress, just as Casey had said, but there was a maintenance entrance on the ground floor, used for deliveries. It was less secure than the main lobby, but still risky. They'd need a distraction, a way to bypass the cameras, and a hacker to get into the servers. Jamal was their best shot for the last part, but he'd need to be on site. By noon, they'd roped in Sasha and Mara, who arrived at Casey's with a bag of supplies, burner phones, a couple of fake IDs, and a USB drive loaded with hacking tools. The group crowded around the kitchen table, the air thick with tension and coffee fumes. Here's the deal, Eli said, taking charge. Riley and I go in through the maintenance entrance. Sasha, you're our eyes outside, watching for guards. Mara, you're with Jamal in a van nearby, running comms and tech. Casey, you're our backup ready to pull us out if things go south. Mara frowned. You're assuming we can even get in. That entrance might have keycard access too. I can handle that, Jamal said, holding up a small device. RFID cloner. If we can get close to a guard's keycard, I can copy it. And the cameras? Riley asked. Looping software, Jamal said. I can feed their system a static image for a few minutes. Long enough for you to get in and out. Eli looked at Riley, who was staring at the blueprints, their jaw tight. You still in? He asked quietly. Riley met his gaze, their eyes steady. Yeah. Let's do this. The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. They tested the comms, practiced their timing, and memorized the layout. By dusk, they were as ready as they'd ever be. Eli felt the weight of it all, the lives depending on them. But every time he looked at Riley, he found his resolve again. They left Casey's house at midnight, piling into a borrowed van. The city was alive, its neon heartbeat pulsing as they drove downtown. The Vanguard building loomed ahead, a sleek tower of glass and steel, its upper floors dark except for a few glowing windows. Sasha parked a block away, blending into the shadows. Eli and Riley slipped out, their hoods up, moving silently toward the maintenance entrance. Jamal handed them earpieces, his voice crackling through. Cameras are looped. You've got 10 minutes. Eli nodded, his heart pounding. He glanced at Riley, who gave him a small, determined nod. They reached the entrance, a heavy metal door tucked behind a dumpster. Jamal's cloned keycard worked, the lock clicking open with a soft beep. Inside, the building was quiet, the air cool and sterile. They moved through a service corridor, their steps muffled by the hum of the HVAC system. Eli's hand brushed Riley's, a fleeting touch that steadied them both. The server room was on the 12th floor, accessible via a freight elevator. They slipped inside, the doors closing with a dull thud. As the elevator climbed, Eli felt the tension building, the weight of what they were about to do. You scared? Riley whispered, their voice barely audible. Terrified, Eli admitted, meeting their gaze. You? Same. They smiled, a flicker of warmth in the dark. But I trust you. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened. They stepped into a hallway, dimly lit, with glass-walled offices stretching into the distance. The server room was at the end, a heavy door with a keypad lock. Jamal's voice crackled in their ears. Keypad's a problem. I'm working on it, but you need to buy me time. Eli scanned the hallway, his pulse racing. Copy that. Riley, Keep watch. Riley nodded, positioning themselves at the corner, their eyes scanning the shadows. Eli felt a surge of protectiveness, but he pushed it down. They had a job to do. Minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Then, a sound footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the stairwell. Eli, Riley hissed, their voice tight. Someone's coming. Eli's heart slammed against his ribs as the footsteps grew louder, echoing down the hallway. He grabbed Riley's arm, pulling them behind a glass partition. They crouched low, their breaths shallow, the air thick with tension. Jamal, we've got company, Eli whispered into his earpiece. How's that keypad coming? Almost there. Jamal's voice crackled back. 30 seconds. We don't have 30 seconds, Riley muttered, their eyes darting toward the stairwell door. It swung open, revealing a guard in a dark uniform, a flashlight beam cutting through the dimness. He moved slowly, scanning the hallway, his radio crackling faintly. Eli pressed himself closer to Riley, their shoulders touching. He could feel their heartbeat, rapid and unsteady, mirroring his own. The guard's beam swept over the partition, missing them by inches. Eli held his breath, willing the man to move on. The guard paused, his radio buzzing. Clear on 12, he said, his voice gruff. Heading to 13. Eli exhaled as the footsteps faded, the stairwell door clicking shut. Too close, he whispered. Riley nodded, their face pale but resolute. Let's move. Jamal's voice came through. Keypads down. You're in. They hurried to the server room door, which clicked open under Eli's touch. Inside, the room hummed with the soft whir of cooling fans, rows of blinking servers casting an eerie blue glow. Riley pulled out the USB drive, plugging it into the main terminal. Jamal, you're up, Eli said, keeping watch at the door. Copy, Jamal replied. Running the script now. It'll take a minute to pull the files. Riley stood close, their shoulder brushing Eli's. You think the list is really here? They asked, their voice low. It has to be, Eli said. If it's not, we're out of moves. The terminal beeped, and Jamal's voice crackled. Got it. Downloading now. Looks like encrypted files names, addresses, timestamps. This is big. Eli's heart leapt, but the moment was cut short by a new sound voices. Multiple this time, coming from the hallway. Riley's eyes widened. They're back. Jamal, how long? Eli hissed. 10 seconds, Jamal said. Hold tight. Eli grabbed Riley's hand, pulling them toward a corner of the room, behind a server rack. The voices grew louder. 2 men, maybe 3, their words sharp and urgent. Check the server room, one said. They've been here. The door swung open, and Eli's stomach dropped. 2 guards stepped in, their flashlights sweeping the room. Riley's hand tightened in his, their breath hitching. Eli pressed a finger to his lips, his eyes locked on theirs, trying to convey calm he didn't feel. The guards moved closer, their beams dancing across the servers. One paused, his light lingering on the terminal where the USB was still plugged in. What the hell? He muttered, stepping forward. Jamal. Now, Eli whispered, his voice barely audible. Done. Jamal's voice burst through. Pull the drive and get out. Riley lunged forward, yanking the USB free just as the guard turned. Hey, he shouted, his hand going to his radio. Eli didn't think. He grabbed Riley and bolted for the door, shoving past the second guard, who stumbled. The hallway was a blur as they ran, the guard's shouts echoing behind them. They hit the freight elevator, slamming the button as the doors closed agonizingly slow. "Come on, come on," Riley muttered, clutching the USB like it was their lifeline. The elevator lurched downward, and Eli's mind raced. They'd gotten the files, but they weren't out yet. The guards would be on them, and the building's security would lock down soon. He glanced at Riley, their face set with determination despite the fear in their eyes. "You did good," he said, catching his breath. "So did you," Riley replied, a faint smile breaking through. "We make a hell of a team." The elevator dinged, opening to the service corridor. They sprinted toward the maintenance exit, Jamal's voice guiding them. "Sasha's got the van ready. Move." They burst into the alley, the cold air hitting them like a slap. Sasha's van screeched to a stop, the door sliding open. They dove in, collapsing onto the seats as Sasha floored it, the city blurring past. "Got the files?" Mara asked, her voice tense. Riley held up the USB, their hands shaking. "Right here." Jamal plugged it into his laptop, his fingers flying. "Holy shit," he said after a moment. "It's the list. Names, addresses, even schedules. Dozens of people, activists, organizers, community leaders. All queer." Eli's blood ran cold. "Is Riley on it?" Jamal's face darkened. "Yeah. Near the top." Riley leaned back, closing their eyes. "So it's real. They're really coming for us." "Not if we stop them," Eli said, his voice fierce. "We've got proof now. We can expose them." "How?" Sasha asked, glancing back from the driver's seat. "We can't just post this online. They'll bury it. Or us. We need someone with reach," Mara said. "A journalist. Someone who can't be bought." "I know someone." Casey's voice came through the comms. They'd stayed back at the house, monitoring. "Freelance reporter. Works for a progressive outlet. She's covered Vanguard before. If we get her the files, she'll run with it." Eli looked at Riley, who nodded. "Do it," they said. "But we need to be careful. If Vanguard knows we have this, they'll come harder," Eli finished. "Which is why we don't stop moving." The van sped through the city, weaving through late-night traffic. Eli's hand found Riley's again, their fingers interlocking. The danger was far from over, but the weight of the USB in Riley's pocket felt like a victorious small one, but enough to keep them fighting. The van pulled into a deserted parking lot, the city's glow fading into the distance. Mara took the USB, promising to get it to Casey's reporter contact by morning. Eli and Riley stayed low in the back, their bodies close in the cramped space, the adrenaline still coursing through them. "You think this'll work?" Riley asked, their voice quiet. "Exposing them." "It has to," Eli said, though doubt not at him. Vanguard was powerful, connected. A single article might not be enough, but it was a start. "We've got their list. That's leverage." Riley nodded, but their eyes were distant, haunted. "I keep thinking about the others on that list. People I know. Friends. They don't even know they're targets." Eli squeezed their hand. "We'll warn them. Once this breaks, they'll know to stay safe." The van dropped them at a new safe house, a tiny apartment above a bodega, arranged by Mara. It was Bonisa's single room with a mattress, a table, and a flickering bulb, but it was off the grid. Sasha and Jamal stayed in the van, heading to meet the reporter, while Mara promised to keep watch nearby. Inside, Eli and Riley collapsed onto the mattress, too wired to sleep but too exhausted to move. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of what they'd done and what still lay ahead. "I don't know how you do this," Riley said, breaking the quiet. Run toward danger like it's nothing. It's not nothing, Eli said, turning to face them. Every time. It scares the hell out of me. But I've been fighting too long to stop now. And you're stronger than you think. Riley's lips quirked. A half smile. You're good at this pep talk thing. Years of practice, Eli said, grinning. Comes with the territory. They lay there, the mattress creaking under their weight. The city's hum a faint backdrop. Riley's hand found Eli's again, their fingers tracing patterns against his palm. It was a small gesture, but it felt like everything a lifeline in the dark. Eli, Riley said, their voice soft. If we get through this, what happens next? He looked at them, their blue hair catching the dim light, their eyes searching his. He wanted to say something profound, something that captured the way his chest tightened every time they were near. But all he managed was, we figure it out. Together. Riley's smile widened, and they leaned closer, their forehead resting against his. I like the sound of that. For a moment, the world shrank to just them, their breaths, their warmth, the quiet promise of something more. Eli's heart raced, not from danger this time, but from the pull he felt toward Riley, the way they made him feel seen, understood. Then, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. Eli was on his feet in an instant, Riley right behind him. Mara's voice came through. Urgent. We've got a problem. The reporter's contact just went dark. Eli's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Dark. No response, Mara said, stepping inside. Phone's off. Emails bouncing. Either she's spooked, or Vanguard got to her. Riley's face paled. They know we have the list. Maybe, Mara said. Or maybe she's just laying low. But we can't take chances. We need to move again. Eli swore under his breath. Every step forward seemed to pull them deeper into danger. He looked at Riley, who was already grabbing their hoodie, their jaw set with determination. Where to now? Riley asked. There's another safe house. Across town, Mara said. But we need to ditch the van. It's too hot. They moved quickly, slipping out into the night. The city felt hostile now, every shadow a threat. Eli kept Riley close, their hands brushing as they walked. Mara led them through back streets, avoiding main roads, until they reached a rundown motel with a flickering neon sign. The room was small, the air stale, but it was shelter. Mara left to check on Jamal and Sasha, promising to return with updates. Eli and Riley sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the night settling over them. We're running out of moves, Riley said, their voice barely above a whisper. Not yet, Eli said, his tone fierce. We've got the list. We've got each other. That's enough. Riley looked at him, their eyes soft but resolute. You really believe that? I do, he said, and meant it. He reached for their hand, pulling them closer. We're not done fighting. Riley leaned into him, their head resting on his shoulder. The gesture was small, but it felt like a vow, a promise to face whatever came next. Together. The motel room was a cage, its walls closing in as dawn crept closer. Eli and Riley sat in silence, the weight of their situation heavier than ever. The list was their weapon, but without a way to use it. It was just a liability, a beacon drawing Vanguard's attention. Mara returned an hour later, her face grim. The reporter's back online, she said, shutting the door. She was spooked, went dark to shake a tail. She's ready to meet, but it has to be now. Where? Eli asked. Standing. Neutral ground, Mara said. Coffee shop. Downtown. Opens at 6. She'll be there. Alone. Riley's eyes narrowed. You trust her. I trust she wants this story, Mara said. She's got no love for Vanguard. But we need to be careful. If they're watching her, we'll handle it, Eli said, glancing at Riley. You ready? Riley nodded, their jaw tight. Let's end this. They left the motel just before sunrise, the city stirring awake. The coffee shop was a small, crowded place, its windows fogged with steam. The reporter, a woman in her 30s named Lena, sat in a corner booth, her laptop open, her eyes scanning the room. Eli and Riley slid into the booth, keeping their hoods up. Mara stayed outside, watching the street. Lena leaned forward, her voice low. You've got something on Vanguard. Riley handed her the USB. A list. Names, addresses, plans. They're targeting queer activists. Lena plugged the drive into her laptop, her eyes widening as she scrolled. Jesus. This is huge. If it's real, it could bring them down. It's real, Eli said. But they're already after us. We need this out now. Lena nodded, typing quickly. I can get it to my editor today. We'll run it online first, then push for print. But you two need to disappear. Once this hits, Vanguard will come hard. We know, Riley said, their voice steady despite the fear in their eyes. They left the coffee shop, splitting up to avoid drawing attention. Eli and Riley took a circuitous route back to the motel, their hands brushing as they walked. The city felt different now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the story to break. By noon, Lena's article was live. Eli and Riley huddled over Casey's laptop, watching the headline spread, private security firm linked to hit list targeting queer activists. The list was redacted for safety, but the names were enough to spark outrage. Social media exploded, hashtags trending, protests forming. But Vanguard didn't stay quiet. By evening, reports surfaced of their PR team spinning the story, claiming the list was fabricated. Eli's stomach churned as he read the statements. Their polished lies too familiar. They're not going down easy, Riley said, their voice tight. No, Eli agreed. But we've got people talking. That's a start. That night, they stayed in the motel, too wired to sleep. Riley sat cross-legged on the bed, their blue hair catching the light. Eli sat beside them, his heart heavy but hopeful. We did it, Riley said, almost to themselves. We got the list out. You did it, Eli said, turning to them. You saw something, and you didn't run. That's what started this. Riley's eyes met his, soft and searching. I wouldn't have made it without you. Eli reached for their hand, his thumb tracing their knuckles. We're a team, remember? Riley smiled, leaning closer. Their lips met, tentative at first, then sure, a kiss born of shared fear and triumph. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. The next morning, Mara called with news. Vanguard's offices were under investigation. The list had sparked enough pressure to force a federal probe. It wasn't over. Carson was still out there, and Vanguard's reach was long, but it was a victory. Eli and Riley stood on the motel's balcony, watching the city wake. The danger wasn't gone, but the fear felt lighter, shared between them. What now? Riley asked, their hand in his. We keep fighting, Eli said. For us. For everyone on that list. Riley squeezed his hand, their smile bright against the morning light. Together. Always, Eli said, and they stepped into the new day, their bond forged in danger, rooted in love, and stronger than ever.